It was a slow Tuesday night in Brooklyn, the kind that makes every second feel heavier than it should. The smell of marinara sauce hung thick inside Luigi's table, a small Italian diner squeezed between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The lights were warm, soft, but the tension was sharp enough to cut air. Emily Parker, 25, adjusted her black apron for the 10th time. Her knees ached from double shifts, but she smiled anyway. She had to. Rent was due, and her mother's heart medication cost more than her entire paycheck. She checked her cracked iPhone, one new message. "Don't forget my pills, sweetheart." "I'm okay." Her mom always said she was okay, even when she wasn't. Then the door opened. The air changed. Maria, the restaurant manager, whispered like warning a soldier before battle. "Table 3. Don't mess this up. He owns half of Manhattan." Emily turned. A tall man in a dark suit walked in, his silver hair sharp under the chandelier. Alexander Reed, the name she'd seen on billboards for luxury towers along the East River. People called him the Cold King of Concrete. Beside him, Victoria Hale, his beautiful lawyer girlfriend, a woman who looked like she'd never had to wait for anything in her life. Emily carried their bottle of red wine with steady hands that weren't really steady. She placed it gently on the white tablecloth, trying to vanish into silence. But Reed frowned. He noticed one drop of water sliding down the stem of his glass. "This is basic," he said, voice low but lethal. "Even diners in Jersey get this right." Every other table went quiet. Emily's face burned. She apologized, grabbed a napkin, wiped, nodded. Her throat tightened, but she smiled because that's what poor people do when the rich humiliate them. Victoria smirked, took a sip, and whispered something that made Reed chuckle. It felt like they were laughing at her life. Emily turned to leave, heart pounding, but her eyes caught something, a ring on Reed's hand. White gold. A sapphire stone in the center, faintly scratched at the edge. Her breath hitched. She'd seen that ring before. Years ago, she found one just like it, hidden in her mother's drawer, wrapped in an old handkerchief. Her mother used to hold it and cry in silence. Emily never knew why. Now it was right there, gleaming on this billionaire's finger. Her chest tightened. Her voice came out before her mind could stop it. "Sir, where did you get that ring?" Reed looked up, confused. "Excuse me." Emily swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "My mum," she cried, holding that same ring. The restaurant froze. Reed's glass stopped halfway to his lips. Victoria turned slowly, eyes narrowing. And in that perfect silence, the richest man in New York looked like he'd just seen a ghost. For a few unbearable seconds, no one in Luigi's table breathed. The sound of the air conditioner hummed above the silence, like a nervous whisper. Alexander Reed, the man whose signature could build or destroy skyscrapers, stared at Emily as if she'd just spoken the secret he'd buried a lifetime ago. "What did you say?" His tone wasn't angry. It was shaky. Emily's voice faltered. "The ring, sir. My mum has the same one." She cried whenever she held it. The words stumbled out, fragile and real. Mariah, the manager, froze behind the counter, ready to step in. Danny, the young cook, peeked from the kitchen, wiping sauce off his hands. Everyone felt something was happening that wasn't meant to happen in a place that smelled like garlic bread and cheap wine. Victoria Hale, in her silver dress and colder smile, tilted her head. "Alex," she said softly, "it's just a ring. Don't let this girl ruin your evening." Reed didn't blink. His jaw tightened. He glanced down at the ring, then back at Emily. "What's your mother's name?" "Linda," she said quietly. "Linda Parker." That name hit him like a blow to the chest. The color drained from his face. He leaned back in his chair, eyes unfocused, trapped somewhere 20 years in the past. Victoria's expression changed instantly. "Alex?" she pressed, sharper this time. "Do you know her mother?" He didn't answer. His mind replayed a memory he hadn't allowed himself to feel. A hospital corridor, a young nurse with soft eyes, and a promise made with that very ring, a promise he never kept. Emily stood frozen, confusion and fear colliding inside her. Why was this powerful man acting like her mother's name had broken him? "Sir," she whispered. Reed stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. The wineglass trembled, spilling across the tablecloth like blood. "I need to go," he muttered. "Now." Victoria grabbed his arm. "Go. We have investors calling at 9. You can't just," but he was already moving toward the door. Maria hurried to Emily, whispering harshly. "What did you do? That man could shut us down." "Who didn't mean to." Emily stammered, but her voice cracked. Reed stopped at the doorway, his back turned. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "Where does your mother live?" Emily blinked. "Queens, near Woodside." He nodded once like a decision carved in stone, and walked out without another word. Victoria stood there, stunned and furious. She grabbed her purse, threw a $50 bill on the table, and hissed, "You have no idea what you've just done." Emily watched her leave, shaking. Danny came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Hey, are you okay?" She tried to laugh, but it came out like a sob. "No." "He just looked at me like I wasn't real." Danny frowned. "You want me to walk you home after your shift?" She nodded numbly. As the door closed behind the billionaire's black Mercedes, the restaurant buzzed back to life, but nothing felt normal. Maria whispered to the bartender, "Did you see his face? Like he'd seen a ghost." Emily stood alone by table 3. The half-empty glass of wine reflected the rings sparkle under the light, and it made her skin crawl. She picked up the glass to clear it away, but her hands were shaking too much. The glass slipped, shattered against the floor. Maria sighed. "That's coming out of your paycheck." Emily crouched, staring at the broken pieces glittering like tiny stars. For the first time, she noticed her reflection in one shard, her eyes wide, confused, and scared. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that careless question had already cracked open a secret big enough to change everything. And somewhere in Manhattan, Alexander Reed was gripping the steering wheel, whispering the same name he hadn't said in 25 years. Linda. The next evening, rain slid down the windows of the tiny apartment in Queens like melted silver. The building smelled of fried food and damp carpet. Emily sat beside her mother, helping her take small sips of tea. Linda Parker looked older than her years, pale skin, grey eyes that carried both love and exhaustion. A heart monitor clicked softly beside the couch. "You're quiet tonight," Linda murmured. Emily hesitated. "Something weird happened at work last night." "Another rude customer?" "Not exactly." She took a deep breath. "There was this man, Mum, a billionaire. He wore a ring, the same ring you keep in that drawer." The cup slipped from Linda's hand, spilling tea over the blanket. Her lips trembled. "What did you say his name was?" "Alexander Reed," Emily said slowly. "Do you know him?" Linda's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Her hand clutched her chest. "Oh God, Alex." Emily froze. "Wait. You do know him?" Before Linda could answer, there was a knock at the door. 3 firm raps that made both women jump. Emily frowned. Who knocks at this hour? She opened the door, and her breath caught. There he was, Alexander Reed. No suit jacket, rain on his shoulders, eyes wild with something between guilt and desperation. Behind him, his black Mercedes idled under the flickering streetlight. "Mr. Reed?" Emily whispered. "Can I come in?" His voice was low, almost pleading. Linda's face went pale. "No. No, you can't." But he stepped inside anyway. The apartment seemed even smaller with him in it, all his power and guilt crowding the space. He looked around, seeing everything he'd never imagined. The peeling wallpaper, the cluttered medicine bottles, the unpaid hospital bills on the table. Linda. His voice cracked. I thought you moved out of the city. I looked for you years ago. You looked? Linda's laugh was bitter and broken. You left. Don't rewrite history, Alex. Emily stood between them, trembling. Someone tell me what's going on. Reed turned to her. I knew your mother a long time ago. She was everything good in my life before I lost my soul to this city. Linda's eyes blazed. You didn't lose your soul. You sold it, and I paid for it every single day. Emily's heartbeat roared in her ears. Why didn't you tell me, Mum? Because, Linda whispered, you deserved better than his name. Reed looked like a man drowning on dry land. Emily. I didn't know you existed. I swear to God, I didn't know. Silence stretched between them, the kind that hurts more than shouting. Then Linda started coughing, deep and harsh, her hand gripping her chest. Emily ran for her medication, but the inhaler slipped from her shaking hands. Reed caught her mother before she fell, holding her like something precious he'd nearly lost once before. Linda, breathe. Please. Her lips moved faintly. You don't get to say my name like that anymore. The ambulance siren grew in the distance, echoing through the rain. Emily's tears blurred her vision as paramedics carried Linda toward the door. Reed tried to follow, but Emily stopped him, shaking her head furiously. You've done enough! Just stay away! He froze, guilt hollowing his face. The elevator doors closed on Linda's stretcher. Emily sank to the floor, sobbing, the sound of rain mixing with her cries. Reed stood in the doorway, drenched, whispering to no one. I left one woman crying with that ring. Now there are two. And somewhere in her heart, Emily knew this was only the beginning of a storm that could destroy them all. The hospital lights were too bright, too clean for the kind of pain they carried. Emily sat in the waiting area, her clothes still damp from the rain. She clutched her mother's purse in both hands, like it could hold her world together. Through the glass doors of the emergency unit, she saw doctors rush around Linda's bed. Machines beeped. A nurse adjusted the oxygen mask. Then the automatic doors slid open again, and Alexander Reed walked in. His presence felt wrong in this place of exhaustion and fear. He looked out of place in his tailored shirt, the sleeves rolled up, his eyes heavy with regret. People recognized him. Whispers started, phones lifted for photos. But he didn't care. He went straight to Emily. How is she? His voice was rough. Emily glared at him, standing between him and the room. She's fighting for her life. Because of you. He winced. You think I wanted this? I think you disappear, then show up 20 years later like you own the right to care. Before he could answer, the doctor approached. Are you family? Emily started to say yes, but Reed spoke first. I'm responsible for her medical bills. Get her whatever she needs. The doctor nodded, not realizing the chaos that one sentence would cause later. They watched as Linda was wheeled out of the ER into a smaller room. Emily followed, refusing to let Reed near her mother. But once Linda saw him standing in the doorway, her weak voice cut through the air. Let him in. Emily froze. Mom? No. Let him in. Reed stepped closer, removing his jacket, his expression torn between guilt and tenderness. Linda's eyes were tired but sharp. You finally found me, she said softly. I tried years ago, he whispered. I sent money, letters. She shook her head. Don't you dare lie. I never saw a penny, Alex. Not one. Reed blinked, confused. That can't be. I made sure someone made sure I got nothing. Her breathing was shallow. Maybe your lawyer. Maybe your new woman. I don't care. The result's the same. Emily's heart cracked, hearing the bitterness in her mother's voice. Mum, please, don't talk like that. Linda smiled weakly. Sweetheart, I have to. He needs to hear it before it's too late. She turned back to Reed. You left me with a baby, and a promise you broke the minute your bank account grew. I raised her with nothing but night shifts and faith. And you, her voice trembled, you turned into everything you once swore you'd never become. Reed's eyes glistened. I never stopped caring for you. Caring? Linda scoffed. You can't care from a penthouse, Alex. Caring means showing up when the bills are due, when your child's crying, when I thought I'd die in that apartment. Emily stood there, tears streaming down, feeling both pity and anger. Reed knelt beside Linda's bed. I can't undo the past, but I can make sure you're okay now. Linda whispered. You can't buy peace. He lowered his head, defeated. Then tell me what I can do. Her answer came slow, like a prayer. Be a father to her before it's too late. Emily gasped. Mum, what are you saying? Linda looked straight at her daughter. He's your father, Emily. The man you served dinner to, he's the reason you're alive. The monitor beeped faster. Nurses rushed in. Emily stumbled backward, eyes wide, the room spinning around her. And as doctors flooded the room, one truth echoed louder than any alarm. The man she hated most was the one she'd been searching for her whole life. The word father hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. Emily stood frozen at the foot of the hospital bed, her mind blank, her throat dry. The beeping machines filled the silence that followed her mother's revelation. Linda was breathing fast, her fingers gripping the sheets, but her eyes stayed on Emily, begging her to understand. Reed stepped forward, his voice low, trembling. Emily. I didn't know. If I had don't, she cut him off, shaking her head. Don't you dare say you didn't know. You knew enough to walk away. He tried again, desperation creeping in. Your mother never told me she was pregnant. I only found out tonight. Linda's voice was weak but sharp as glass. I tried to reach you, Alex. I called your office, sent letters. Someone always answered your lawyer. She said you'd moved on. Victoria. The name hit both of them at once. Emily turned to Reed, fury boiling under her tears. Your perfect girlfriend made sure we disappeared, didn't she? Reed's face twisted with realization. If she did, she destroyed 20 years of my life. 20 years. Emily's voice cracked. Try living those 20 years wondering why your mum cried every time she looked at you. The nurse stepped in gently, trying to calm her. Miss, please, your mother needs rest. But Linda shook her head. She needs the truth. Emily backed against the wall, her chest heaving. I don't even know who I am anymore. Reed ran a trembling hand through his hair. You're my daughter. You're the best thing I never knew I had. It sounded like a confession and an apology rolled into one. But it wasn't enough. Don't say that now, she whispered. You don't get to say that after one night. Linda reached out, trying to grab Emily's hand. Sweetheart, listen to me. But her voice broke mid-sentence. The monitor began to beep erratically. Mum? Emily's heart stopped. Mum! The nurse shouted for help. Within seconds, 2 doctors rushed in, pulling curtains around the bed. Reed tried to move forward, but Emily pushed him away. Don't touch her! Just don't! He stood there helplessly as they worked on Linda, his world collapsing again, the same helplessness he'd once felt walking away from a woman who begged him not to leave. After what felt like hours, the doctor stepped out, face grim. She's stable, but very weak. She needs heart surgery soon. Without it, she may not survive the week. Emily swallowed hard, tears blurring her vision. How much? The doctor hesitated. A lot. Even with insurance, it's ill cover everything, Reed interrupted firmly. Emily spun toward him, eyes blazing. You think money fixes this? You think throwing cash at everything makes you human? He looked broken. It's all I have left to offer. No, she snapped. It's the only thing you ever had to offer. The doctor cleared his throat, uncomfortable. We'll need to prepare the consent forms. Emily stood by the door, shaking. Her world had flipped overnight. The man she hated was her father. The woman she loved was Ahing, and the truth felt like poison. Reed tried one last time. Please let me help. For her sake. She looked at him, tears cutting down her cheeks. You already helped. You gave me a name you'll never want to carry. He flinched like Shed hit him. Emily turned away, staring at the closed curtain around her mother's bed. And as the night deepened outside the hospital window, she made herself a silent promise if the truth had destroyed her life, she'd make sure it destroyed his, too. The rain hadn't stopped since that night. It poured over the city like punishment, washing the streets, but not the guilt. Emily hadn't gone home in 2 days. She slept in the hospital waiting room, curled up under her mother's thin blanket. Every time a nurse walked by, she jolted awake, afraid it was bad news. She could still hear her mother's words, "As your father." They echoed through her skull like a curse she couldn't silence. Across the hall, Alexander Reed stood by the vending machine, looking like a man who'd lost everything money couldn't buy. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his phone filled with missed calls from investors and, most persistently, from Victoria Hale. He didn't answer any of them. When Emily walked by, he tried to speak, but she didn't even glance at him. She went straight to the billing desk. How much for the surgery? She asked. The woman behind the counter frowned. You'd have to speak with the finance office, but your mother's file is on hold. On hold? Emily repeated. What does that mean? It means someone cancelled the transfer of funds this morning. Emily's heart sank. Who? The clerk checked the record. A legal representative named Victoria Hale. Her blood boiled. She spun toward the hallway where Reed stood. Did you tell her to do that? He looked confused. What? No, I told them to move forward immediately. She just froze my mother's surgery, and you expect me to believe you had no idea. He ran a hand over his face. Victoria must have accessed my accounts. She has power of attorney for... Because you gave it to her, Emily snapped. You trusted the woman who destroyed our lives. Reed's voice cracked. I trusted her because she was the only one still standing when everyone else left me. Emily stared at him, disgusted. Maybe they left because they saw the real you. Before he could answer, her phone buzzed a private number. She hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice purred on the other end. If you care about your mother's heart, you'll stop talking to Alexander Reed. Emily's pulse spiked. Who is this? Let's just say someone who likes things quiet. Sign the confidentiality forms I emailed you, and Linda gets her surgery. Don't, and well, accidents happen. The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, trembling. It was Victoria. She was threatening them. She stormed toward Reed. She called me. She said if I don't shut up, Mom doesn't get surgery. Reed's expression hardened, the old, ruthless businessman resurfacing for the first time. She's gone too far. He pulled out his phone, calling his office. Get me every file Victoria Hale has touched in the last year. I don't care if you wake people up. Emily wanted to hate him, but for the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. Not power, not control, but fear. You really didn't know? She whispered. No, he said quietly. And if what you're saying is true, she's been lying to me for years. Before she could respond, a nurse rushed out of the ICU. Miss Parker! Your mother's oxygen levels are dropping. Emily froze, her blood turning to ice. She ran down the corridor. Reed right behind her. Inside the room, Linda was gasping, her monitor screaming. Doctors shouted orders. Emily pressed her hands against the glass, tears blinding her. Please, Mom. Please hold on. Reed stood beside her, silent, the weight of every choice he'd ever made pressing down on him. And as the alarms filled the room, both of them knew this wasn't just about saving Linda's life anymore. It was a war for the truth, and the clock was running out. The morning came grey and merciless. The rain finally stopped, but the air still smelled like sorrow. Emily hadn't slept. Her mother was alive, but barely. The doctors said the surgery could still save her if it ever got approved. Emily walked to the hospital cafeteria, eyes hollow, clutching her phone. Every time she tried calling the finance office, the answer was the same. Funds frozen. Authorization required. She knew exactly who was behind it. Across town, in a Manhattan penthouse above Fifth Avenue, Victoria Hale sat in front of her vanity, scrolling through her phone. Her reflection smiled toward. Satisfied. You should have stayed a nobody, Emily Parker, she whispered, sending one last email to a journalist she knew too well. By noon, the story broke. Billionaire Alexander Reed accused of hiding secret daughter with struggling waitress. The headline spread like wildfire on Twitter, on morning talk shows, in cafe gossip. They used Emily's photo from the restaurant's website. Within hours, the world had an opinion about her. At the hospital, nurses stared longer than usual. A man filming on his phone whispered, "That's her." The billionaire's mistake. Emily didn't even have the strength to yell. She just walked away, shaking, her cheeks hot with shame. Then her phone buzzed again. Maria, her manager from Luigi's table. "Emily, honey," Maria said softly, "you need to come in." Her stomach dropped. When she arrived, the restaurant felt different. Customers looked up from their pasta, murmuring. The owner, Mr. Romano, waited at the counter, arms folded. "I can explain," Emily started, voice trembling. "I didn't ask for any of this." He sighed, heavy. "You're a good worker, but this brings trouble. Reporters called here already. I can't risk it." "Please," she begged. "My mom's in the hospital. I can't lose my job now." He looked away. "I'm sorry, kid." He handed her an envelope, her last paycheck. She stood there, speechless, as Maria squeezed her arm. "It's not fair," Maria whispered. "No," Emily said softly. "It's not." She walked out into the street, her uniform still on, her apron in her bag. The city roared around her, indifferent. A billboard above her head flashed Reed's company logo, the same man whose blood she carried, the same man who'd destroyed her life without meaning to. She wanted to hate him, but hate didn't pay medical bills. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. "This is Channel 9 News," a reporter's voice said. "Emily Parker, we'd love to hear your side of the story. People think you're manipulating Alexander Reed Care to comment." Emily hung up instantly, her stomach twisting. Then another call, Danny. "Em, I saw the news. Are you okay?" She forced a breath. "No, but I will be." He hesitated. "You should leave the hospital for a bit. Cameras already showed up there. I can pick you up." "Don't," she said quickly. "They'll follow you too." Back at the hospital, she tried to slip through the back entrance. But as soon as she walked in, flashes went off. A man shouted, "Emily, are you really his daughter? Did your mum hide you for money?" Security guards stepped in, pushing people back. Emily covered her face and ran inside. Upstairs, she stopped at her mother's door. The sound of the machines was steady again, but her mom looked even paler. Emily sat beside her and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I ruined everything." She didn't notice the shadow standing outside, Alexander Reed, holding a newspaper, his own name on the front page beside hers. He folded it slowly, his face unreadable. Then he whispered to himself, almost like a vow. She shouldn't have to face this alone anymore. But what he didn't know, Victoria had just made her next move, and the real damage hadn't even begun. Night fell over Queens like a bruise spreading across the sky. The hospital lights glowed pale through the rain-streaked windows. Emily sat by her mother's bed, watching the heart monitor blink steady for now. But she knew that rhythm could stop at any second. She hadn't eaten since morning. The envelope from Luigi's table lay on her lap, her last paycheck, not even enough to cover 2 days of her mother's medication. The door creaked open. A nurse stepped in, holding a phone. "Miss Parker, someone's asking for you downstairs. Says it's about your mother's case." Emily frowned. "Who?" She didn't give a name. "But she's dressed like money." Emily's chest tightened. She already knew who it was. Down in the parking lot, under the cold fluorescent lights, Victoria Hale leaned against a sleek black car. Perfect posture, perfect lipstick, and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Miss Parker," she greeted, voice smooth as honey over poison. "You look tired." Emily crossed her arms. "What do you want?" Victoria smiled faintly. "To help you. Your mother's surgery, delicate case. Expensive, but I can make it happen tomorrow morning." Emily's heart skipped. "What's the catch?" Victoria reached into her leather bag and pulled out a folder. "A confidentiality agreement. You sign this, and the world never hears your name again. You're not his daughter, not his problem. You disappear quietly. In return, Linda Parker gets her surgery at the best private facility in Manhattan." Emily stared at the folder like it was a live grenade. "You're trying to buy me off." "Don't be dramatic," Victoria said smoothly. "I'm giving you a choice. Your silence for your mother's life." Emily's stomach twisted. If you cared about saving lives, you wouldn't have frozen her surgery in the first place. Victoria's eyes flickered, but her smile didn't move. "Sometimes people have to be managed. Alexander is emotional right now. He doesn't think clearly when you're involved. I'm helping everyone, including you." Emily's voice shook. "You lied to him 20 years ago. You stole his letters. His money, did you think we'd never find out?" The mask slipped for a split second. "Be careful what you say, sweetheart. People who dig too deep tend to get buried." Emily's heart pounded. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," Victoria replied calmly. "Your mother's chart is on my desk. I can make it vanish or make her surgery happen. You choose." For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. The papers in the folder glowed white under the lights, a promise and a curse. "You really think I'd sell my mother's dignity for your money?" she whispered. Victoria tilted her head. "Not dignity, dear. Her life." Emily's fingers curled into fists. "You're evil." "No," Victoria said softly. "I'm efficient." The sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Danny appeared from the shadows, still wearing his worn denim jacket from the restaurant. His voice cut through the tension. "If this deal was clean, you wouldn't be making it in a parking lot at midnight." Victoria's smile faded. "Stay out of this, cook boy." He stepped closer, pulling out his phone. "Say that again, and you'll make sure this conversation hits the internet before sunrise." For the first time, Victoria's face faltered. She closed the folder, her eyes dark with fury. "You just made a mistake. Both of you." She slipped into her car, the tires screeching as she drove off into the wet night. Emily's knees gave out. Danny caught her before she hit the ground. "Hey, it's okay. She can't touch you now." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down. "You don't understand, Danny. She already has. Because by morning, the whole world would know the billionaire's daughter refused to be bought, and Victoria would make sure she paid for it." The next morning broke cold and bright, the kind of New York sunlight that made everything look harsher, less forgiving. Emily hadn't slept. She sat in the hospital hallway with a paper cup of bitter coffee, watching the world move without her. Nurses passed. Machines beeped. Her mother slept under layers of tubes and wires, alive, but fragile. Danny had crashed on one of the waiting room chairs. He'd stayed the whole night, just in case Victoria came back. His loyalty was the only thing keeping Emily from falling apart completely. At 8 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Parker," a calm male voice said. "This is the billing department. We just received confirmation. Your mother's surgery has been denied." Emily's chest tightened. "What? But she's supposed to be approved." "I'm sorry," the man said quietly. "The file shows financial interference from an external account. We can't proceed without reauthorization." She didn't need to ask who the external account belonged to. Victoria. Emily's hands shook. She stood so fast the coffee spilled. "I'll fix it myself," she muttered, grabbing her bag. Danny jumped up. "Where are you going?" "To find her," Emily said through clenched teeth. "If she wants a fight, she'll get one." Meanwhile, across Manhattan, Victoria Hale sat in her glass-walled office high above Park Avenue, watching the city glitter below. She was flawless red lipstick, diamond earrings, calm like a Dora before the strike. Her phone rang. "Did she sign?" a male assistant asked. Victoria smiled faintly. "Not yet. But she will. Fear always wins." A knock interrupted her. The door opened, and Alexander Reed walked in, holding a manila folder. "Victoria," he said coldly, "we need to talk." She turned slowly, surprised but poised. "Alex, I didn't expect you so early." "I just got off a call with the hospital," he said, voice low. "They said you interfered with Linda Parker's payment authorization." Her smile barely moved. "Alex, you're under stress. You shouldn't make accusations." "Don't," he snapped. "I trusted you with my company, my life, and you used it to control people you thought didn't matter." Victoria's eyes flickered. "You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. That girl, she's manipulating you." He threw the folder on her desk. Inside were bank statements, forged letters, and proof of withheld payments from decades ago. "You lied to me 20 years ago, too. You made me believe Linda wanted nothing from me. You made me abandon my own family." Her mask cracked for the first time. "Alex, listen." "No," he said quietly. "You listen. If anything happens to that woman or her daughter, I'll make sure your name never appears on another contract in this city again." He turned and walked out, leaving her trembling, something she'd never been before. Back at the hospital, Emily returned to find her mother's condition worsening. Her breathing was shallow, her lips pale. "Mum, please hold on," Emily whispered, gripping her hand. A nurse entered. "The surgery team's still waiting on financial clearance." Emily's mind raced. She didn't have time. She had to make someone listen. Then the elevator doors opened. Alexander Reed stepped out, his coat still on, his face set with purpose. Emily froze. "What are you doing here?" He looked her straight in the eye. "Fixing what I broke." Before she could speak, he handed a new authorization file to the nurse. "Everything's covered. Move her to surgery prep now." The nurse nodded and hurried away. Emily stared at him, tears threatening. "Why should I believe you?" "Because," he said softly, "I just ended Victoria Hale's career." For the first time, Emily saw exhaustion in his eyes, and maybe something like honesty. But even as relief washed over her, a nurse ran up from the ICU. Breathless. "Miss Parker, there's a problem. Someone from the media just broke into the hospital wing. They're looking for you." Emily's blood went cold, and as cameras and chaos erupted in the hall, she realized Victoria wasn't finished. She'd just changed the battlefield. Flashes exploded like gunfire in the hospital corridor. Nurses shouted, trying to block the journalists pushing through the sliding doors. Someone had leaked the location of Linda Parker's room, and in less than an hour, the hallway turned into a circus. Emily froze beside her mother's bed, clutching the blanket as microphones and lenses pressed toward the glass. "Emily Parker!" a reporter shouted. "Is it true you're the billionaire's secret daughter?" Another voice yelled. "Did your mother hide you to get money?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. Linda stirred weakly, wincing under the bright light from the cameras. "Stop filming!" Emily cried, stepping in front of the window. "She's sick. Leave her alone." The crowd didn't move. It was blood in the water, and they were sharks. Then a deep voice cut through the noise. "Everyone out!" The reporters turned. Alexander Reed stood at the end of the hallway, flanked by 2 security guards from his company. His face was cold, unreadable, but his eyes, they burned. He strode forward, his voice even but deadly. "If one more flash goes off in this hallway, I'll sue every network here. You think your jobs are worth harassing a dying woman?" The corridor fell silent. Even the boldest reporter lowered her camera. Reed turned to the hospital administrator, who'd been hovering uselessly in the background. "You have 5 minutes to clear this floor, or he'll buy this building and fire every one of you." No one doubted he could. Within minutes, the hallway emptied. The silence that followed was so thick, Emily could hear her mother's shallow breathing again. Reed stood by the door, shoulders tense. He looked older, smaller somehow, the shine of power stripped away. Emily's voice was raw. "Why are you doing this?" "Because they were after me," he said quietly, "and they hurt you instead." She swallowed hard. "You made it easy for them." He nodded. "I know." They stood there, the air heavy with things unsaid. Through the glass, Linda's chest rose and fell weakly. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice trembling. "She's having surgery today. They said noon." Reed nodded. "He'll be here." "I don't want you here." "Doesn't matter," he said softly. "I'm staying." Before Emily could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a call from Victoria Hale. He ignored it, but it buzzed again and again, until finally he answered, jaw tight. "What do you want?" Victoria's voice dripped venom. "You think this is over because you yelled at some reporters? You humiliated me, Alex. I built you, and I can destroy you. You already did," he said. "You just don't see it yet." She laughed, cold, sharp. "Oh, I see perfectly. You love that waitress's daughter now, don't you? Fine. Let's see how she feels when her mother's surgery suddenly fails." Reed's stomach dropped. "Don't Yora," but the line went dead. He turned to Emily, his face pale. "We need to move her. Now." "What?" "Why, because I don't trust Victoria to stop at threats." Before Emily could protest, alarms began to blare. Nurses ran down the hall toward the ICU. One of them shouted, "Room 214, heart rate dropping." Emily's world tilted. That was her mother's room. She sprinted after them, Reed on her heels. Inside, doctors were shouting orders, pushing oxygen, checking vitals. Linda's monitor screamed. Emily grabbed her mother's hand, sobbing. "Mom, please, stay with me." Reed stood frozen, watching the woman he once loved slipping away again, this time, for real. The doctor barked, "We're losing her!" Emily looked up at Reed through tears. "Do something!" He stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Please, Linda, don't go." And for the first time in decades, the man who ruled Manhattan fell to his knees beside a hospital bed, powerless, terrified, and praying to a god had forgotten existed. But what no one knew was that the next call Victoria made would unleash something far worse than any of them imagined. The shrill sound of the heart monitor filled the room like a scream. "Clear!" a doctor shouted, pressing the defibrillator paddles to Linda's chest. Her body jolted. The monitor flatlined again. Emily's knees buckled. "Mom, please, you can't leave me." "Charging again," the doctor ordered. Another shock, Another second of awful silence. Then beep. A weak rhythm flickered on the screen. Relief flooded the room like air after drowning. "She's back," a nurse whispered. "We've got her." Emily collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. The doctors moved quickly, stabilizing Linda's heart, preparing her for immediate transfer to surgery. Outside the room, Alexander Reed leaned against the wall, his hand over his mouth, his body trembling. For once, the man who owned skyscrapers couldn't steady himself. When Emily stepped into the hallway, her face was pale, streaked with tears. "They said she needs surgery now, or she won't survive another episode." Reed nodded. "I already called a specialist at Mount Sinai, the best cardiac surgeon in the state. He'll be here within the hour." Emily's voice shook with exhaustion. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care now?" He looked at her with eyes full of guilt. "Because 25 years ago, I didn't, and it's haunted me every single day since." She wanted to scream, to tell him it was too late, but when she looked at him, she saw something different. He wasn't just a billionaire in an expensive coat. He was a man, begging for a second chance he might never earn. Half an hour later, Reed's phone rang. It was his assistant. "Sir, the media is tearing you apart. They're saying you bribed the hospital, covered up lawsuits. Reed cut him off. I don't care. But, sir, your board. Tell the board he'll deal with them when my family is safe." The word family hung in the air. Emily glanced at him, stunned. He ended the call, turned to her, and said quietly, "Let them destroy me, if they want. I won't lose her again." Before either could say more, the surgeon arrived, a tall man in blue scrubs carrying a clipboard. "I've reviewed the charts. We can operate, but we need full consent. There are major risks." Emily's hand trembled as she signed the form. "Do whatever it takes." Reed reached for the pen next. "Put my name, too." The surgeon hesitated. "Your family?" Reed's jaw clenched. "Yes. I'm her husband." Emily looked at him sharply, but the surgeon only nodded and hurried off. "Why would you say that?" she demanded when they were alone. "Because if I didn't," he said quietly, "they'd make you prove you could pay first." Her anger softened just a little. As the surgery began, hours stretched into eternity. Emily paced the waiting room while Reed sat motionless, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. At one point, he whispered, "Do you remember what she said before the ambulance came?" Emily shook her head. "She told me I don't get to call her name like that anymore." He gave a sad laugh, and she was right. Emily looked at him, her voice fragile. "If she doesn't make it." He looked up, eyes full of fear. "Don't say that." "But if she doesn't," she continued, "he'll never forgive you." He nodded slowly. "I wouldn't forgive me either." The door finally opened. The surgeon removed his mask. "The procedure went well. We stopped the heart attack in time, but recovery will be long. She's stable." Emily sagged with relief. Reed closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank God." The surgeon paused. "One more thing. We found something unusual, a medication in her system that wasn't on her chart. Someone tampered with her prescription." Emily's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "It wasn't an accident," the doctor said. "Someone wanted her heart to fail." Reed stood, fury igniting behind his eyes. "Victoria," Emily whispered. "She tried to kill my mother." And in that moment, the billionaire who once built empires decided to destroy one, starting with the woman who almost killed the only family he had left. The sterile smell of the recovery room couldn't wash away the truth. Someone had tried to kill Linda Parker, and it hadn't been a random mistake. Emily stood frozen beside her mother's bed, her fingers gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles turned white. "How could anyone do this?" she whispered. Alexander Reed's voice came out like gravel. "Because power makes people think they can play God." He was already on his phone, calling his security director. "I want the hospital pharmacy records." Every prescription filled in Linda Parker's name, every employee who touched it. Emily turned to him, her eyes fierce through the tears. "You think this was Victoria?" "I don't think," he said. "I know." Across Manhattan, Victoria Hale's penthouse glowed gold in the morning sun. She was pouring herself a glass of champagne when her phone rang. "Victoria Hale?" a voice said. "Speaking. This is Detective O'Connor from the NYPD. We've received a complaint that you interfered with a patient's medical care." She laughed softly, interrupting. "Detective, I manage millions in hospital investments. If I made a call, it was for efficiency, not sabotage. We'll need to speak with you in person. I'm afraid I'm traveling." "Not anymore," the detective replied. "We have a warrant to seize your digital records." Her smile faltered. Back at the hospital, Emily's exhaustion gave way to determination. "If you really want to make this right," she told Reed, "you'll go public. Tell everyone what she did. Tell the truth." He shook his head. "Not yet. We can't fight her with emotion. We need proof." Emily glared. "You're still thinking like a businessman. She tried to kill my mom, and you want to play chess." He met her eyes. "You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference." She looked away, angry at how calm he sounded. But hours later, when a security guard arrived with a flash drive, everything changed. Reed opened his laptop. On the screen appeared hospital security footage. Victoria entering the pharmacy office at midnight 2 days earlier, typing into a terminal, replacing a bottle on the shelf. Emily covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" Reed leaned closer, jaw tight. "That's her." "She didn't even hide her face," Emily whispered. "She thought she'd get away with it." He closed the laptop, his voice ice cold. "She won't." That evening, the two of them drove to his midtown office, 30 stories up, overlooking the city lights. The building was half empty, just guards, and the echo of Reed's reputation crumbling in the press. Emily stood by the window, watching the city hum below. "When this is over, what happens to you?" He gave a tired smile. "You'll probably lose everything. Then why are you doing this?" He looked at her. "Because for once, losing everything feels like the right thing to do." Her throat tightened. Before she could speak, the intercom buzzed. His assistant's voice cracked through the static. "Sir, Ms. Hale is here. She says you asked to see her." Emily's heart stopped. "You invited her here?" Reed's tone was calm. "If you want to end a war, you face the enemy yourself." The elevator dinged. Victoria stepped out, still flawless, still composed, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the security camera in the corner. "Alex," she purred, "we don't have to make this ugly." Reed slid the laptop across the desk and pressed play. The video of her in the pharmacy filled the screen. Victoria's face drained of color. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "You tried to kill her." Victoria swallowed. "You can't prove intent." Reed's voice cut through. "We don't need to. That footage is already in 3 inboxes. One of them belongs to the NYPD. Victoria's calm fard cracked. "You'd destroy everything we built for her." "For them," he said, nodding toward Emily. She sneered. "You'll regret this, Alex." He shook his head. "No, Victoria, you will." Security entered, escorting her away. She didn't resist, but her eyes locked on Emily with a promise of vengeance. As the elevator doors closed, Emily exhaled for the first time in hours. Reed looked at her quietly. "It's over." But Emily's voice was low, haunted. "No, not yet. Because people like her don't fall, they crawl back." And somewhere below, in the dark streets of Manhattan, Victoria Hale was already planning her next move. For a few blissful hours, the hospital was quiet. Emily sat beside her mother, who slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Machines hummed softly, and for once the air didn't feel heavy with fear. But peace never lasts long when you're part of Alexander Reed's world. Downstairs in the hospital lobby, a storm was already gathering. Reed stood at the reception desk, phone to his ear, jaw clenched. Yes, I have the footage. Yes, I gave it to the police. What I need is protection for the patient. No, this isn't about business anymore. He ended the call and turned, only to see Victoria Hale standing there, wrapped in a beige trench coat, sunglasses hiding her bruised pride. He froze. You shouldn't be here. She smiled faintly. Relax, Alex. I'm not here to kill anyone. I'm here to talk. Security moved toward her, but she lifted a hand. 5 minutes. Then leave. Reed hesitated, then nodded to the guards to step back. Victoria removed her glasses, revealing eyes rimmed red, tired but still dangerous. You think you've won? You think the world will see you as a savior because you turned on me? I don't care how the world sees me, he said evenly. I care how she sees me. Emily? Victoria scoffed. That girl will destroy you, Alex. She's emotional, naval liability. You'll throw everything away for her, and she'll still hate you. Reed didn't blink. If protecting her means losing everything, then yes, he'll throw it all away. Victoria's smile faltered. You used to think like me. Ruthless, focused. That's the man I built. You wouldn't even have that empire without me. He sighed. And I wouldn't have a soul either. Her face hardened. You think you're the only one with pain? You think I sabotaged your charity just for power? Reed frowned. You poisoned a woman, Victoria. What could possibly justify that? She laughed bitterly. You really don't know, do you? He stared at her, unease creeping in. Victoria leaned closer, voice trembling but sharp. I didn't poison Linda Parker. I only tampered with the records. Someone else did it before I ever touched those files. Reed's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying, she whispered. Someone inside your company has been bleeding you for years, stealing from your medical fund, covering it by transferring drugs through hospital donations. When I looked deeper, I found Linda's name buried in those files. Emily had just stepped out of the elevator when she heard the last sentence. She froze behind the column, heart pounding. Reed's voice rose. You're lying. Victoria shook her head. Check the signature on those prescriptions. It isn't mine. It's his. She slid a paper across the counter. A scanned signature stared back the initials of Michael Crane, Reed's most trusted financial officer and longtime friend. Reed went pale. Victoria smirked. Now you understand. I wasn't trying to destroy you, Alex. I was trying to stop him. You just never asked why. Emily stepped forward. You expect us to believe that after everything you've done? Victoria turned, eyes cold but sincere. Believe what you want. But if you want your mother to live, you'd better start with the truth. Michael's not done cleaning up his mess. She put her glasses back on and walked toward the door. Tell the cops whatever story makes you feel noble. But when he comes for you, remember I warned you. The automatic doors hissed shut behind her, leaving silence thick as smoke. Reed stared at the paper in his hand, the signature burning into his mind. Emily whispered, Is she telling the truth? I don't know, he said quietly. But if she is, then the person trying to kill your mother isn't gone. And somewhere in a corner office high above Manhattan, a man was already deleting files and erasing every trace of what he'd done. The storm outside mirrored the one inside Emily's chest. Lightning cracked over Manhattan as she sat in the back seat of Alexander Reed's Mercedes, the city lights smearing across the rain-streaked windows. She couldn't stop replaying Victoria's words in her head. Michael Crane isn't done cleaning up his mess. Beside her, Reed gripped the steering wheel, jaw tight. Michael's been with me since the beginning. He helped me build my first tower. He's like family. Emily turned to him, voice cold. You said the same thing about Victoria. He didn't answer. The silence between them was louder than thunder. When they reached Reed's downtown office, the glass fortress that once made him proud security guards let them in, confused by their unannounced arrival. Reed went straight to the elevator, his hand trembling as he pressed the top-floor button. Emily followed, her eyes scanning every reflection in the mirrored walls. Her mother was safe for now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that danger was already waiting. The elevator doors opened to a dark, empty floor. Only the faint glow of computer screens lit the space. "Michael," Reed called. His voice echoed. "We need to talk." No answer, just the hum of the city below. They stepped into Reed's private office. Papers were scattered across the desk, financial statements, charity accounts, medical fund transfers. Emily recognized her mother's name typed on several. She picked one up. "These are the hospital donations. But look at the dates. Some were withdrawn weeks before my mom's admission." Reed's face paled. "He's been laundering money through the charity." A slow clap came from the doorway. "Smart girl," said a calm, mocking voice. Emily turned. Michael Crane stood there, immaculate as always in a navy suit, his expression cool, too calm for a man caught red-handed. "Michael," Reed said quietly, "tell me this isn't true." Michael smiled. "I'd love to, Alex. But let's not insult each other's intelligence." Emily stepped closer. "You poisoned my mother, didn't you? You used her name to cover your fraud." He looked at her like she was a child interrupting adults. "Poison is such a dramatic word. I merely arranged a transfer. The hospital pharmacy had inventory issues. I just let the system clean itself." "You could have killed her," Emily whispered. He shrugged. "Collateral damage. I was protecting what you built, Alex. When you started wasting millions on hospitals and charity, someone had to balance the books." Reed's voice shook with fury. "You think stealing from the sick is protecting me?" Michael's tone turned icy. "I think you forgot what made you powerful. You used to build towers. Now you want to build redemption. That's not good business." Emily's heart pounded. "You're disgusting." Michael's smile darkened. "No, sweetheart. I'm necessary." Reed stepped forward. "You're finished, Michael. The police already have the footage from Victoria's office. They'll trace the rest of this back to you." Michael chuckled. "You mean the footage that was conveniently leaked to the press this morning? The one showing you and Victoria conspiring to hide payments?" Reed froze. "What?" Michael pulled out his phone, showing a news headline. "Alexander Reed accused of fraud and cover-up in hospital scandal." Emily stared at it, horrified. "He framed you." Michael pocketed the phone, smug. "You've spent your whole life building a name, Alex. I just took it away." Reed's voice broke. "You betrayed me." Michael tilted his head. "No. I outgrew you." Before Reed could reply, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Michael's men, not his. "Escort Mr. Reed and Miss Parker out," Michael ordered. "They're trespassing." "Trespassing." Emily's pulse spiked. "You won't get away with this." Michael smiled. "I already have." As they were forced out into the rain, Reed looked back at his own office the Empire had built, now owned by the man who'd destroyed it. Emily grabbed his hand, trembling. "What do we do now?" Reed's answer was barely a whisper. "We start over." She stared at him, rain soaking her hair. "Start over how?" "He has everything, the company, the proof." He looked out into the storm. "Then we fight with the only thing he can't fake anymore, the truth." But neither of them knew Michael Crane had one more move left, and it would hit closer to home than either of them imagined. Rain hammered the windshield of the old Toyota as Emily and Alexander Reed drove through the sleepless streets of Manhattan. His black Mercedes was gone, confiscated, along with everything else he owned. What was left of his empire now sat behind the polished desk of a man he once called his brother. The radio hummed with breaking news. Reed Industries faces federal investigation after leaked documents reveal financial fraud and misuse of medical funds. Emily turned the volume down. They're calling you a monster. Reed stared out at the city lights reflecting in puddles. For once, they might be half right. She shook her head. You didn't do this. Michael did. You have to fight back. I can't fight without proof, he said, and every document that could clear my name is sitting in his office or destroyed. Emily crossed her arms. Then we find another way. Reed glanced at her, surprised by the determination in her voice. You sound like your mother. Good, Emily said softly, because she's the only reason I'm still standing. By dawn, they parked outside an all-night diner in Queens, steam fogging the windows. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon almost felt human again. Reed sat hunched over the booth, unshaven, exhausted. Emily pushed a mug toward him. You can't give up, she said. If you do, Michael Winsand Mom's name stays buried in all of this. He sighed, rubbing his temples. The system he built is airtight. Even the police won't move unless I hand them something solid. Emily frowned. Then we give them something solid. How? Her eyes drifted to the small envelope sticking out of his jacket pocket, the one Victoria had left behind the night she was arrested. What if she already did? Reed hesitated, pulling out the envelope. Inside was a flash drive. He'd ignored it, assuming it was leverage she meant to use later. He plugged it into his laptop. The screen lit up with folders labeled Coors Reed Industries offshore accounts, hospital transfers, and internal communications. Emily's eyes widened. This is everything. Every transaction Michael made. Reed scrolled faster, his heartbeat quickening. There's enough here to bury him and clear us both. But one file made him freeze. A video file named Insurance MP4. He clicked it. The footage showed Michael in his office on a video call with someone. His voice was clear. If Reed ever finds out, we'll pin it on Victoria. The waitress and her mother are expendable. No one will miss them. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. He planned everything. Reed's eyes darkened. He planned murder. He closed the laptop. We take this to the police now. Emily nodded, but as they stood to leave, headlights flared outside the diner. A black SUV screeched to a stop. Two men stepped out, suits soaked in rain. One of them opened the door, flashing a badge. Mr. Reed, FBI. You need to come with us. Reed stiffened. What's this about? Fraud, obstruction, and evidence tampering, the agent said flatly. We have a warrant. Emily stepped in front of him. You're making a mistake. He didn't do any of that. The agent's expression didn't change. Tell it to the judge. They handcuffed Reed as flashbulbs erupted outside the press already there, tipped off. Emily's stomach twisted. Michael! She screamed as they shoved Reed into the SUV. I have proof! I can clear him! But the doors slammed, and the car sped into the rain. She fell to her knees on the wet pavement, clutching the flash drive to her chest. Her voice broke. I won't let you win, Michael. Not again. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked like an omen. And in a skyscraper high above the storm, Michael Crane watched the live news broadcast, smirking as he poured himself a drink unaware that the file that could destroy him was already in Emily's hands. The rain had stopped by sunrise, but New York still looked bruised grey, heavy, waiting for the next blow. Emily sat on the front steps of the diner, her hair plastered to her face, clutching the flash drive like it was oxygen. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of her father being shoved into that black SUV, handcuffed, humiliated, helpless. Her phone buzzed. Danny's name lit the screen. Emily, where are you? I just saw the news. They arrested him? Her voice cracked. They did, and it's all over the internet. Michael made sure of it. Did you find anything that can clear him? She looked down at the flash drive in her shaking hands. Yeah. I found everything. Danny paused. Then what are you waiting for? Take it to the police. Emily stared into the distance. You don't get it. The FBI has already labeled him guilty. If I go to them with this, Michael will make it disappear before it even hits their system. So what? You're just gonna sit there? Her jaw tightened. No. I'm going straight to the press. If the world sees the truth, Michael can't bury it. Danny sighed. That's dangerous, Em. He's not gonna let you just walk in there. She stood, wiping the rain from her cheeks. Then hell have to stop me himself. Meanwhile, across the East River, Alexander Reed sat inside an interrogation room, grey walls, a single light, and a stack of papers on the table that painted him as a criminal. The lead agent flipped through the documents. Mr. Reed, we have records showing offshore accounts in your name connected to stolen medical funds. Reed stared at them, tired but calm. Those accounts were forged by my CFO. His name is Michael Crane. Check the timestamps. The agent smirked. We did. The transactions were routed from your laptop in your office. Reed froze. That's impossible, unless someone else had access. His mind flashed to that night Michael standing behind his desk, helping with the hospital donations. The realization hit like ice water. He planted it. The agent leaned forward. Mr. Reed, you've got one chance to cooperate. Give us the real story, or you'll go down alone. Reed met his gaze. I already gave you the truth. What you do with it, that's on you. Back in Queens, Emily and Danny arrived at a small newsroom that agreed to meet them. Inside, reporters huddled around screens, phones ringing non-stop. The editor, a sharp-eyed woman named Grace Porter, listened as Emily explained everything: the poisoned medication, the stolen charity funds, the setup. When Emily placed the flash drive on her desk, Grace leaned back, skeptical. You're telling me the city's most powerful financier framed his boss and tried to kill your mother? Emily nodded. You don't have to believe me. Just watch. They opened the video file. Michael's voice filled the room. The waitress and her mother are expendable. No one will miss them. Grace's eyes widened. Holy hell. If this is real, it's not just a story. It's a war. Emily's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then froze when she heard the voice. Miss Parker, Michael Crane said smoothly, I'd rethink what you're doing. That drive doesn't just incriminate me. It incriminates your father, too. Emily's hand trembled. You're lying. Am I? He said. Play the next file, the one labeled Legacy. See who signed those deals. Then decide who the real villain is. The line went dead. Emily hesitated, then clicked the file. Her father's digital signature flashed across the screen, authorizing payments she didn't understand. Danny whispered, Emily, what is that? Her chest tightened. I don't know. But if this is true, Grace looked at her gravely. You're sitting on evidence that could save your mother or destroy your father forever. Emily stared at the laptop, tears welling. And as the city woke to headlines calling Alexander Reed a fraud, his daughter was forced to ask herself one question. What if the man she's fighting for isn't innocent after all? The newsroom was silent except for the soft hum of the computer and Emily's unsteady breathing. On the screen, her father's signature appeared again and again, authorizing transfers, signing off on accounts, moving funds that had destroyed families. Danny leaned closer, eyes wide. This doesn't make sense, he said. Michael set him up. Emily whispered, maybe both can be true. Grace, the editor, crossed her arms. If this data is real, your father wasn't just negligent, he was complicit. He approved every transaction. No, Emily said quickly. He wouldn't do that. He didn't even know about the stolen funds until I told him. Grace gave her a look filled with equal parts pity and doubt. Sweetheart, money changes people, even the ones we love. The room felt smaller with every word. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. She clicked open another file, one labeled Private Call Recordings. A distorted recording began to play. Her father's voice, unmistakable. "Michael, just move it. I don't care how. No one can trace it back to me." Emily's stomach twisted. No, that's not him. That can't be him. Danny touched her shoulder gently. Maybe it's been edited," Grace interrupted. "This could ruin Reed permanently. If it's fake, we need to prove it before we air it. If it's real," Emily stood abruptly. "I need to see him." 2 hours later, Emily walked through the steel doors of the Federal Detention Center. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering like dying hope. A guard led her to a glass partition. Reed was already sitting on the other side, pale but composed. He lifted the phone slowly when she sat down. "Emily," he said softly, "you shouldn't be here." "I had to see you," she said. Her voice cracked. "I saw the files, Dad. The ones with your signature, the recordings. Please tell me they're fake." He hesitated, his eyes filled with something that looked too much like guilt. "It's not what it seems." "Then tell me what it is," she snapped, tears burning her eyes. "Did you sign those documents? Did you move that money?" Reed's jaw clenched. "Yes. But it was years ago, before I knew how deep Michael's corruption went. He told me it was a tax loophole for a medical trust. I didn't question him because I wanted to believe we were doing good." Emily stared at him through the glass, her world spinning. "So you did it?" He nodded. "I didn't know innocent people were getting hurt. I swear to you, Emily, I didn't." Her tears fell freely now. "And when Mom needed help? When we were living on nothing, you couldn't even look for us." "I tried," he whispered. "Victoria told me. You were gone. She said you didn't want anything to do with me. I was too cowardly to push harder." Emily pressed her hand against the glass. "You built an empire on lies, and now you're losing it for the truth." He pressed his palm to hers. "Maybe that's justice. But don't let Michael win. Please, whatever happens to me, you have to finish this." A guard tapped the glass. "Time's up." Emily lowered the phone slowly, tears streaking down her cheeks. Reed mouthed, "I'm sorry," as they led him away. She sat there long after he was gone, her reflection fractured across the glass, half her face, half his. Danny was waiting for her outside. What did he say? Emily's voice was hollow. He admitted it, but he didn't understand what he was signing. Michael tricked him. "So what now?" Danny asked. She looked up at the grey sky above the prison gates. "Now I find the original files, the unedited ones. If Michael forged his voice, there'll be proof." Danny frowned. "And if there isn't?" Emily wiped her tears, her jaw tightening. "Then my father isn't the man I thought he was." And as she walked away, lightning flashed above the city, a warning that the truth she was chasing might destroy what little family she had left. The next morning broke cold and colorless. The sun never really rose over Manhattan. It just hid behind the grey. Emily hadn't slept. The conversation with her father replayed in her head like a haunting melody. "Yes, I signed them." Danny drove her through the city in his old pickup, the kind that rattled with every bump. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Breaking into Reed's old office isn't exactly legal." Emily clutched her backpack tighter. "It's the only place Michael hasn't scrubbed clean yet. If the original contracts exist anywhere, they'll be there." Danny sighed. "You really are your father's daughter." She gave him a faint, sad smile. "I hope not." They parked in the alley behind Reed Industries, the once grand tower that now carried scandal like a shadow. The glass facade still gleamed, but the security presence was heavier Michael Crane's men, not Reed's. Emily slipped through the service entrance, using the security card her father had once given her just in case. The scanner beeped green. She exhaled shakily. Inside, the air smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal. The marble lobby was silent, save for the echo of her footsteps. She and Danny rode the elevator to the 32nd floor, Reed's old private suite. The lights were off, the desk spotless, as if the room itself was pretending nothing had ever happened. Danny whispered, "Where do we start?" Emily looked around. He used to keep backups of everything. Hard drives, contracts, board minutes. He said, "Paper never lies." She moved to the bookshelf, running her hand along the spines of leather binders until one felt different, heavier. She pulled it out, revealing a hidden latch. A small panel popped open in the wall. Danny blinked. "You're kidding me." Inside was a narrow safe with a biometric scanner. Emily pressed her thumb against the glass. It flashed red. "Try his birthday," Danny suggested. She entered it manually. 071, her father's birth date. The lock clicked. Inside were several USB drives, a sealed envelope, and a small black notebook. Emily took the notebook first. Her father's handwriting filled the page's numbers, transactions, names. At the bottom of one page, 3 words were underlined twice. "He forged my voice." Her heart skipped. "Danny, look." She flipped to the next page, a date and an address scribbled hastily. July 5th. Crane's private lab, 14th Street. Danny frowned. "Lab? He must have used a sound lab to fake those recordings," Emily said. "If we can find the original wave files, it'll prove my dad was framed." Suddenly, the elevator dinged behind them. They froze. Voices echoed in the hall. 2 men, low and professional. Mr. Crane said to secure the suite. "No one's supposed to be here." Emily's pulse exploded in her ears. She shoved the USB drives and notebook into her backpack. Danny grabbed her wrist. "Back door! Now!" They ducked into the maintenance corridor as the guards entered. One of them flipped on the lights. "Looks clear," he said. Emily and Danny crept down the stairwell, hearts racing. Just as they reached the ground floor, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered in a whisper. "Hello?" A voice she knew too well replied, "You really should stop sneaking into buildings that don't belong to you, Emily." Her blood ran cold. "Michael." "Funny thing about loyalty," he said smoothly. "It's only admirable when it isn't suicidal. You're playing with fire." "You framed him," she hissed. "I have the proof." Michael chuckled softly. "No, sweetheart. You have the pieces I let you find." "What do you mean?" "You'll see soon enough. I'd hurry back to the hospital if I were you." The line went dead. Emily's breath caught. "Danny, we have to go. Now." He frowned. "What happened?" "Something's wrong. He's going after Mom." And as they ran out into the rain, sirens wailed in the distance, the kind that never arrive soon enough to stop what's already begun. The ambulance lights painted streaks of red across the hospital walls when Emily burst through the doors. Her lungs burned, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear Danny calling after her. "Where's my mother?" she shouted at the front desk. "Linda Parker, room 214. The nurse looked up, startled. "She's being moved there was a power issue in the ICU." "What do you mean, a power issue?" But before the woman could answer, Emily saw 2 orderlies pushing a gurney toward the side exit. Her mother's face was half covered with an oxygen mask. "Mom!" she screamed, sprinting toward them. One of the orderlies turned, and her blood ran cold. It wasn't a hospital employee. It was one of Michael Crane's men, the same face she'd seen in the elevator footage from Reed's office. Danny caught up just in time to see her run at them. "Hey, stop!" The men shoved the gurney towards her, the emergency doors. Emily lunged, grabbing the railing, and one of the men swung at her. Danny tackled him before the punch landed. The other fled through the rain, dragging Linda's bed toward a waiting black van. Emily screamed for help. Security alarms blared. A doctor rushed out with staff. The van screeched away before anyone could stop it. She collapsed to her knees in the downpour, her voice raw. "They took her! They took my mom!" Danny helped her up, soaked and shaking. "We'll find her, I swear." Meanwhile, inside a dim warehouse on the outskirts of Brooklyn, Linda lay unconscious under harsh fluorescent lights. Michael Crane stood nearby, immaculate as ever, watching the monitors connected to her vitals. "Shell live," one of his men said. "We didn't touch her, just like you ordered." "Good," Michael replied coolly. "Pain has more value when it's borrowed, not inflicted." He poured himself a drink, looking almost bored. "Reed's daughter has something of mine. I just need her scared enough to bring it to me." The man nodded. "What if she calls the cops?" Michael smiled faintly. "They already think Reed's guilty. Who'll believe the waitress with a record of trespassing and stolen corporate data?" He raised his glass toward Linda's still form. "Your daughter's brave, Mrs. Parker. Let's see how brave she stays when I give her a choice." At the hospital, the police arrived to take statements. Emily's hands trembled as she recounted everything. One officer exchanged a worried glance with another. "We'll issue an APB," he said. "But if this was coordinated, these guys are professionals. You sure you didn't see a plate?" "No," Emily whispered. "It was too dark." Danny squeezed her shoulder. "What now?" Emily stared at her phone. A new message appeared, unknown number again. 1. New video message. She tapped play. The screen showed her mother unconscious, surrounded by medical monitors. Then Michael's voice filled the audio. "You have something that belongs to me. Bring it to the old pier at Red Hook before midnight. Alone. If I see anyone else, she dies. If you refuse, she dies slower." The video ended. Emily's breath hitched. "He has her." Danny grabbed her wrist. "You're not going alone. I have to," she said. "Hell kill her if I don't." Danny's voice broke. "He's setting you up, Em? It's a trap." "I know," she whispered. "But if I don't go, my mum doesn't make it till morning." At 11:45 p.m., Emily stood by the Red Hook pier. The wind from the bay bit into her skin. In her backpack sat the USB drives, the only leverage she had left. Headlights appeared in the fog. A car door slammed. Michael Crane stepped out, smiling like death in a designer suit. "I knew you'd come." Emily's voice trembled, but steady. "Where's my mother?" He nodded toward the van parked nearby. "Safe. For now. Let her go first." Michael chuckled. "That's not how negotiations work, sweetheart." She held up the flash drive. "You'll get this when she's free." He smirked. "You really think you're in control?" The sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Emily turned, another figure emerging from the shadows. It wasn't one of Michael's men. It was Alexander Reed, her father. And as his eyes locked with Michael's, Emily realized she wasn't the only one who'd come to make a deal with the devil. The pier was cold and alive with wind when Alexander stepped forward, hands empty but steady. Michael Crane's smile didn't reach his eyes. Emily's backpack felt like a stone against her spine. Inside it lay the proof that had cost them everything. She kept her voice small. "Where is she?" Michael gestured toward the van. A pale light showed Linda inside, sleeping under blankets, monitors humming. "She's fine," Michael said. "For now. You bring me what I want, I let her go." "You can't keep doing this," Reed said, voice gravel and rain. "It ends tonight." Michael laughed softly. "You think your brand of redemption scares me? I own courts. Contracts. People's fear. You have nothing." Emily stepped between them. "You're right about one thing. He does have nothing. Because tonight, you're about to lose everything you built with lies." Before Michael could reply, a sound of sirens rose from the distance. Reed had called in favors he hadn't used in years. 2 black SUVs rolled up silently. Agents spilled out, their badges flashing. Michael's men moved to flee, but the agents were on them fast. Michael's face fell. Panic creased his forehead. This is impossible." An agent cuffed him. "Michael Crane, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and kidnapping." Emily's knees trembled. Relief and exhaustion warred inside her. Reed crossed to the van, helped lift the curtain. Linda's eyes flickered open, confusion melting into recognition. She tried to sit, voice thin. "Emily?" Emily leaned in, whispering, "I'm here, Mom. I'm here." Doctors and detectives swarmed, taking statements and checking vitals. Emily held her mother's hand as medics wheeled Linda toward the ambulance, toward the hospital and proper care. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt the soft possibility of breathing. In the aftermath, Michael's empire collapsed faster than tabloids could trace it. Leaked files, recordings, lab invoices, and drives recovered from Reed's hidden safe combined into a forensic trail prosecutors loved. Victoria's role as an accessory, and the evidence of her tampering strengthened the case. She was stripped of licenses, arrested, and later convicted for obstruction and fraud. Her fall was public and brutal. She watched from a hospital bed where a different kind of justice, low and private, waited. Reed's fate was messier. Courts unpacked his complicity and Michael's betrayal. He paid heavy fines, stepped down as CEO, and accepted criminal culpability for negligence. But the recordings that proved Michael's orchestration and the new evidence Emily and Reed handed to authorities cleared the worst charges. Reed served a reduced sentence and agreed to full financial restitution into a medical relief fund named for Linda Parker. Emily refused to be turned into a trophy. She channeled everything she'd lost into the foundation. The Linda Parker Fund started small: a clinic wing at a community hospital, emergency grants for families crushed by medical debt, scholarships for caregivers training in nursing. It grew because Emily spoke from experience, not press releases. People trusted her voice because she'd lived the ledger lines behind every statistic. Danny stayed. He became the quiet backbone of the clinic's kitchen, running meals and logistics, marrying the practical with the tender. Reed showed up, not to command, but to learn, volunteering at the clinic, doing paperwork, sitting with patients who had no one. He learned mercy the hard way, and offered it publicly. The city changed in small ways. A handful of corrupt officials and executives faced inquiry. A few silent donors pledged to audit the charity sector. It wasn't neat. It wasn't perfect. But people who had been invisible found a place to go when they needed help. Emily kept the ring not as a symbol of wealth, but as a reminder. She wore it on a chain at her throat, close to her heart. She never let it become a headline. It was for her and Linda, a private talisman that signaled what mattered: presence, truth, and responsibility. Years later, standing by a clinic window, Emily watched a young nurse hand a child a vaccination and smile. Linda, thinner but laughing, moved gently through the hallways. Reed stood at the reception desk, signing forms in ink, not signatures that concealed ledgers. Danny carried a tray, singing off-key. Emily laughed, the sound light and real. Justice had not been cinematic or merciful to everyone. Some paid dearly, others were quietly forgiven. Most important, Emily kept her mother's dignity intact and built something that would keep others from choosing between medicine and rent. She touched the chain at her throat and thought quietly, life doesn't always fix itself. But when truth gets loud and stubborn, people refuse to back down. Things change. That was enough. So that's how our story ends. Hey, my amazing friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with us all this way, then something in this story must have touched your heart, even just a little. And maybe that's the point. Because life, like Emily's journey, isn't about being perfect, it's about standing back up when everything falls apart. It's about choosing truth over comfort, forgiveness over anger, and courage over fear. The Stoics used to say, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Sometimes the pain we think will destroy us is actually what rebuilds us stronger, wiser, more human. So if you're going through to something right now, betrayal, loss, heartbreak, remember this: you are not broken. You're being shaped. Like Emily, you can turn your pain into purpose, your story into strength. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen or gave you a bit of hope, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and hit that subscribe button. Because together, we're building a place where stories heal. Stay strong, my friend. You're not alone in this journey.